Hello, and welcome to our SBA certification webinar. We will begin in about 30 seconds. Okay, let's get started. So welcome to our SBA's certification webinar. Today we will cover all of the SBA certifications available to apply for any small business. I will introduce myself. My name is Gloria Gomez, and I'm with the Orange County Inland Empire District Office. We cover Orange, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties. However, you can find an SBA district office throughout the country. And all of these certifications are available to anyone, regardless of your location. If you're listening in from other cities or states, welcome. I hope this information is helpful. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box. I will stop periodically to check if we have any questions and answer them at that point. Okay, so first we will start with an introduction to federal government contracting. So just a general overview of how it works, how you do business with the federal government, regardless of you having a certification or not. Okay, so what does the federal government buy? Seems like a silly question because they buy just about anything, from office supplies, professional services, construction of government facilities, general freight trucking, etc., so much more. However, where it starts to get tricky and you need to do a little bit of homework, if you will, is knowing how the federal government buys, in what quantities, in what locations, what time of year even. So we always recommend that businesses should do market research to determine if the federal government buys your product or service in the way that you're currently selling it. There are a number of ways to do this. So let's take a look at where to begin. And I also want to mention that keep in mind that there are various levels of government. Not all certifications are equal. Not all processes are the same. You may have to go to different portals depending on who you're looking to do business with, whether it be a state government, a local or city government, schools, etc. It might be a little different. So here I just want to emphasize that we are talking about the federal procurement process. Okay, so a couple of places, links, websites that you can visit to gather that information and do your market research. So first off is SAM.gov, which stands for System for Award Management. If you've been around government contracting or heard of it, it was previously the Federal Business Opportunity Site, or FBO. So now it's SAM. That is where you go to look up opportunities, upcoming projects that the federal government has that you may be able to bid on. However, there is one step, and I'll go into a little more detail on what step number one is before you can actually do that. And that is to register your business on the SAM.gov website, where you will create a business profile, letting the government know that you're interested in selling to them. You'll fill in all your business information, owner information. It does take a couple of weeks or so to get through the process so that you're verified. So just be patient. If you're looking to start federal contracting, just keep that step in mind, that it does take a couple weeks before you're actually active and can either start bidding on contracts or even to start the certification process. We have the Dynamic Small Business System, which is basically a sub part of the SAM.gov website. So any small business looking to do business with the federal government will be added onto that DSBS profile. And we add this on as market research because you can see what other businesses are out there already selling to the federal government. This profile that you create is somewhat of a resume for your business, where you can list out previous contracts that you've done, and they don't have to be necessarily with a federal agency. If you have received contracts in the private sector, you can list that there, again, as part of your resume and experience for your business. Interagency contract directory, you can look up other agencies' information. USAspending.gov, that's a good one to see past history on what the government has purchased. You can see who purchased specific services or products by NAICS code, by agency. If you're looking to target a specific agency and you want to see what their procurement trends have been, you can use that as well. The GSA e-library. So GSA is another agency, General Services Administration, who has a lot of procurement resources for small businesses, such as their schedules, where you can apply to be listed, if you will, as a vendor for the federal government. Acquisition Central, again, this will help you in kind of forecasting what the federal government is looking to purchase. So whereas you can see on USA Spending what the government already spent in the past and those trends, on Acquisition Central, you can see the forecast, what they plan to in the next few years, so that you can prepare or look out for certain procurements that are going to be set out in the future. Okay, now we're talking a little more specific about our SBA certification programs. When we talk about the set-asides for the certification programs and the socioeconomic categories. So the federal government, as we said, buys just about everything. They spend billions and billions of dollars a year on contracting, but there is a certain portion of that that must be set aside for small businesses. So the small business goal overall is 25% of all federal spending. And in the next slide, we'll see what that was for the previous years. But the targets, so that you get an idea, is for women-owned small businesses, 5%, small disadvantaged business, or SDB as it's known, 5%. And that is where the SBA's 8A program, it's not called an 8A goal, it's a small disadvantaged business goal. Like I mentioned, 5%. HUBZone businesses, 3%. Service disabled veteran-owned small business, 5%. And just kind of as an FYI, any procurement between $3,500 to $250,000 are automatically reserved for small business as a small business set aside, and or for any of these subcategories. Anything above that does not have to be set aside. Obviously, the SBA, one part of what the SBA does is we always look at all the contracts that government agencies are forecasting to set out, and not me, but somebody from our SBA office from government contracting takes a look at that and tries to have those agencies set that aside for small business. So it's not only the $3,500 to $250,000, but that is just by rule has to be set aside for small business. Okay, so for our certifications, one of the requirements is that you must be a small business. And one of the top questions probably that we get is, how do I know that I'm a small business? So the first thing you need to know is what your primary NAICS code is. So the NAICS code is a 6-digit number that identifies every single industry. And so we kind of put an example of a few here. So if you're in new single-family housing construction, your NAICS code is 236115. If you are in landscape architectural services, your number is 541320, and so on. There's hundreds, tons of pages listing every single NAICS code. The important part in knowing whether you're a small business is knowing what either your gross revenue or your employee size is. And why you need to know that is what will determine whether you're a small business or not. So the calculation is, size is determined either by average 5 years gross revenue or number of employees averaged over 24 months. Again, it will depend on which NAICS or industry code identifies your business to know which of those calculations you'll use. So for example, if you are in the 236115 NAICS code that we mentioned on housing construction, if you look on the third column where it has that 39.5 number, and if you see right above it, size standard in millions of dollars, what that means is if your average gross revenue over 5 years is $39.5 million or less, you are considered a small business. For the employee count, let's look at motor and generator manufacturing all the way to the right, 1,250 employees. So if my average employee count over the previous 24 months is at or below 1,250 employees, I am considered a small business. So that's kind of the long explanation of how you are a small business, how you are considered a small business. Once we send out a copy of the presentation, you can click on that SBA size standard table and take a look at all those industries and all the size standards to just make sure that you're a small business. Okay, so this is a quick summary of NAICS code by dollars spent. So in the previous fiscal year, these were the top industries that received or where the government spent the majority of its money. So at the top, number 1 is manufacturing. Second industry is professional, scientific, and technical services. Third, administrative and support and waste management and remediation services. And number 4, construction, and so on and so forth. Now, these are just the top NAICS codes based on total spending by all the government. However, when you're doing your market research, you can actually break it down by agency, by NAICS code. Let's say that you're in, I don't know, let's see, if you are in construction, number 4, you can look to see who spent the most in construction, how they bought their services, if they used any of the set-aside programs, or the average dollar amount of their contracts. If, let's say, average amount was 100 million, maybe you're too small. That's not who you necessarily would be targeting as a potential client. But if you see that their average construction contract was 2 to 5 million, and that's more or less where you're more comfortable, then that again could be a potential customer of yours. So I'm just trying to tie it together so you can make sense of when we say do market research, know your NAICS code, look at the trends, etc. That's what we mean, so that you can gauge who could be a potential customer, a good fit for you, for your business at this time. Okay, now you might not be ready to take on that $2 to $5 million contract. Maybe you're averaging 100,000 per contract, give or take. So maybe subcontracting is a good place for you to start, not necessarily being a prime on a contract. And so what that means is a prime contractor is a person or business who has entered into a prime contract with the U.S. government directly, meaning you are responsible. You're signing on that dotted line saying you will perform. A subcontractor is a person or business that is awarded a subcontract to provide supplies or services necessary in the performance of another's contract. So you're a support. Maybe it's a build a house contract, but you do the roofing part of that. And then another subcontractor does the landscaping part of that. That would be considered a subcontractor, where you're not the one signing on the line. You're just, again, supporting the larger contract. Okay, prime controls relationship. Prime and subcontractors need to work as a cohesive, high-performance team. So it's always important to know who your partner is going to be, who you're getting into that subcontract agreement with. But this can also be an opportunity to build capability and gain experience so that later on in a year or so, you can be ready to be a prime of your own contract. And we have resources for that. Again, when we send out this presentation, you can click on this link and get information for that. Okay, so getting started. A lot of the things I've said, I'll probably repeat, but first off, we say focus on a manageable number of agencies whose business you are most likely to secure. So that is the reason why it's important to do your market research. Review forecasts for agency procurement. So know ahead of time what's coming up. If you're here in Southern California, you know that down in San Diego, there's a lot of Navy facilities. So yes, there are a lot of opportunities there. So you may want to do some research and see what they're forecasting in the next 6 months to 1 year so that you can build your team. You can have primes, you can have subs, depending on what business you are, to see what opportunities are coming up and how you can plan for them and be better prepared and have a better opportunity to win those contracts. Like we mentioned, review each agency's prior history of awards. Contact agency offices for small business assistance. Individual agencies maintain government contracting websites. So for example, even though I did say on sam.gov, you will find all the contract opportunities, other agencies also have their own sites where you can specifically go to get assistance, contact the small business liaison at the OSDBU office, it's called right here. So again, this is just an example for the Department of Justice, but every single agency has their website where you can be pointed to that small business specialist kind of to start marketing, if you will. And of course, like we mentioned, register on sam.gov. Okay, so I wanted to highlight this because, again, this is step number 1 for a couple of things. One, if you're looking to sell to the federal government, you must be registered on here. Whether you're a large business, small business, looking for certification or not looking for certification, you must have a SAM profile created in sam.gov. Now, you want to make sure that you are actually on sam.gov. We've had a couple businesses, unfortunately, call and let us know that they thought they were signing up for a sam.gov profile. They clicked on something. They were being asked to pay $500 to set up a profile. That's the wrong place. sam.gov is absolutely free. Anything related to our application, our certifications, there is no charge. Now, there are people out there who you can pay if you're interested in doing so, but it is not required. It does not up your chance of getting into the program. It does not up your chance of getting a contract if you're paying somebody. So just be aware of that. And so as you can see on the right here of this website, it says official U.S. government website, 100% free. We just want to make sure you know that you're at the right place. Because again, this is step number 1 for any part of what I just mentioned, selling to the government, getting your certification. So make sure that you're in the right place. This is where you will start your profile. This is also, like I mentioned, where you will look up contract opportunities. Here on this link where it says contract opportunities was fbo.gov. You can also look up contract data for past contracts. You can look up other businesses that are selling to the federal government. Lots of information here. Okay, the SBA also has resources for you to kind of learn about it. If you have no idea what federal contracting is, you kind of just heard and you know that the government sells a lot and you want to get in on that, but you have no idea what that entails. We do have what's called the Learning Center, where we have free online contracting courses that are designed to help small businesses, prospective small businesses looking to just get involved with that. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier on, there are different levels of government and procurement that's involved. So as you can see, these are a couple of those. So state procurement, if you are in the state of California, that is the Department of General Services, and that is their website. They have their own certification if you're looking to sell to them. So one of those designations is a small business entity. The other is a disabled veteran business entity. Those are the only 2 certifications, if you will, that they recognize. Now, locally, like I mentioned, our 3 counties have their own procurement process and websites as well. So if you think the federal government's kind of big for me right now, I'm not that experienced, I want to start more at the county level. Again, if you're local here to Southern California, there's Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino. They have their own processes that you may want to look at as well. There's also non-government, which is National Minority Supplier Development Council. They have one type of certification if you're looking to sell to the utilities, the supplier clearinghouse. They're the ones you want to look at. And then we also want to mention one of our partners who is a DoD funded resource, the Apex Accelerators. So basically they are procurement technical assistance centers that can help you with setting up your business for procurement, helping you do that market research, helping you maybe choose which certification is right for you, whether it be with the federal government, with the SBA, or something else. Okay, so we went into just general government contracting, and now we'll get started with our specific certification programs. So first off, we'll start with the 8A Business Development Program. Okay, so what is it? It is a program named after a section of the Small Business Act, Section 8A. The 8A BD program is a business assistance program for small disadvantaged businesses, and we'll talk about what that means in a little more detail. It was created to help firms that are owned and controlled majority, at least 51%, by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals to help them compete in the American economy and access the federal procurement market. The program provides entrepreneurs with targeted management and technical assistance to help them compete for contracts and other business opportunities. So I'm going to summarize that in saying that this is a program that helps by providing technical assistance to small businesses to prepare them, to guide them towards accessing those federal contracts. This is not an automatic contract program where if you are certified, you will receive contracts automatically. It's a business development program to prepare you, to guide you, to help you through that process so that you can successfully go out and market to the various agencies, look for those opportunities, bid on them, and be successful in performing on those contracts. This is the certification is a 9-year term, and you will have a one-time only in a lifetime participation. So just keep that in mind. I'll repeat that a couple times because you want to make sure you're ready once, if this is the certification you choose, that your business and yourself are ready to take on the certification because you only get one opportunity to participate in the program. Okay, so what are the benefits? What will I get out of this? So like we mentioned, the government has a mandate of awarding 5% of all prime contracts to 8A business development firms, also known as Small Disadvantaged Business or SDB. What we provide are management and technical assistance, marketing and outreach assistance. You'll have access to mentor protege and joint venture programs, access to surplus property through the state of California. The big draw is always our contract set-asides and sole sourced. So meaning contracts get set aside for firms who are certified in our 8A program. So now you're competing only amongst your peers and not large business, more experienced businesses, that will probably outbid you in many cases. And so there is a threshold for sole source of $4.5 million for goods and services per contract. That's not in total, that's just per contract. And up to $7.5 million for manufacturing. In fiscal year 2023, 8A firms won $76.2 billion in federal contracts. That's a pretty large number. And I think in one of the slides I may have mentioned, or it was on there, in the previous year, the federal government in total reached 28%, I believe, of the goal. So it exceeded the 25% goal by achieving 28 point something percent. So that's how we get that $76.2 billion that 8A firms received. And the previous year, it was $69.9 billion. So we just want to demonstrate that every year it does go up. So there's lots of opportunities to be had there. Another benefit of our program is you have access to the SBA's Empower to Grow program. These are resources available to you where you can receive individualized coaching and training to help those small disadvantaged businesses and others grow with government contracts. Okay, now we get into the actual eligibility requirements of this program. So these are the different categories that I'll touch upon because when you're applying, when you're looking at that application, you will see a question or information asked of you in all of these categories. So there will be information asked on ownership, on control of the business, your citizenship, your small business size standard, your potential for success of the business, the owner's good character, the owner's social disadvantage, the owner's economic disadvantage, and we're also looking for your time in business. You must be an ongoing business for 2 years or more to be eligible for this program. Okay, so now let's break it down to each of these categories. So you must be at least 51% unconditional direct ownership by the disadvantaged individual or individuals. So what that means is if you have a business with 3 owners and 2 of them make up, I don't know, 60%, which is the majority, then those 2 individuals will need to meet all of the eligibility criteria. If you have a business where you have a 51% and a 49% ownership, that 51% owner is who we're going to look at to qualify for the program. If you're 100% owner, then it's obviously only you that we're looking to have qualify for the program. Okay, so in partnerships, just a couple examples, the agreements must reflect the unconditional ownership of that person, at least 51% by that individual. If you're an LLC, the disadvantaged individual must own at least 51% of each class of member interest. Corporations, again, must own, the individual must own at least 51% of each class of voting stock and at least 51% of the aggregate of all outstanding stock. So depending on what kind of business structure you have, that's how you want to think about it. SBA will look at the following: stock certificates and ledgers, IRS 1040 Schedule C, 1040 Schedule E, depending on how you file, and the firm's tax returns to verify that you hold that majority ownership. Okay, the next one is control. So not only will we look at on paper what you say, what percentage of ownership you're claiming to have, but we also want to know who's actually working the daily tasks of the business and who's actually in control. And in order to look at that, we will look at who's serving as the highest officer. So basically, this is what you as the person that is qualifying for the program must be. So you must serve as the highest officer, you must control the board if applicable, make the long-term decisions, run the firm's day-to-day business operations, receive the highest compensation from the firm, that's a really big one, possess the appropriate amount and type of management experience needed to run the firm. So we ask for a resume, experience, etc. Have the ability to hire and fire. So if you have bylaws or corporate documents stating that somebody else makes that decision, then the SBA considers that to not be in control. So things like this have to be spelled out, or if there's something contrary to that in any of your documents, that is what the analyst will look at. You must work full-time at the applicant firm. Sometimes, you know, as you're starting a business or a few years in, you're running your business, but you also have, you know, another day job. We're looking for you to work full-time at the applicant firm. And you must also be physically located in the U.S., not only your business, but you, the owner, the individual looking for this certification. Okay, participant must be a U.S. citizen. You will be asked to provide a copy of your U.S. passport or certificate of naturalization, whichever applies. Okay, so this slide should look familiar. You must be a small business to qualify and participate in this program. Again, we take a look at, depending on your industry code, your average 5 years gross revenue or average employee count over the last 24 months. If you happen to have ownership in other businesses, the SBA will also look at that, any ownership in other businesses, your relationship, either through family ties, common investment in other businesses as well. Okay, so now we start to get a little more involved with the business and how ready. This is where we talk about how ready is your business to participate in this. And this is under the category of potential for success. So the business analyst is going to review all of these items, your financial capability. Do you have sufficient capitalization, financial performance, bonding capacity? If you're in construction, that's going to be very important in seeking opportunities. We're going to ask for your managerial and technical capability. Have you performed on previous contracts? Do you have the necessary personnel? If you were to get certified and pursue contracts and be awarded, do you have the licenses you'll need, the personnel to perform on these contracts? Again, potential for success. We don't want to set you up to get in the program and then you bid on contracts and you're not successful. Management capability. So we'll look at the owner, the education, experience, and training of CEOs and other managers, the magnitude and complexity of past and current jobs, qualification for ability to perform on federal contracts. So again, if you have any relevant contract experience, whether it be in the federal marketplace or outside of that, and the ability to meet federal procurement policies. Okay, so there's like a subpart, if you will, to the potential for success, where one of the requirements I mentioned is that you must be an ongoing business for at least 2 years. Now, there are limited instances where you may not have those 2 years in business yet, but you feel you have that capability, the past experience to be successful in the program, then you may be able to request a waiver. And you know, somebody who might feel that way is if you possibly worked for, I'll give a easy example. If you worked for the Boeing company and I don't know, for 10, 20 years, you were a large project manager, you worked on large federal projects, and now you started your own business, you have you know, experience working with the government, and you feel that even though you've only been in business for 1 year, you have been successful, you have that experience where you can request a waiver to that 2-year requirement. So that's an option. However, just keep in mind that you must meet the following 5 conditions. First, the individual upon whom eligibility is based must have substantial business management experience. The firm has demonstrated technical expertise to carry out your business plan with substantial likelihood for success. Third, the firm must have adequate capital to sustain its business plan as a participant. Fourth, the firm has a record of successful performance on contracts from government and non-governmental sources in the primary industry category. So there's that experience part. The firm has or can demonstrate its ability to obtain the personnel, facilities, equipment, and any other requirements needed to perform on such contracts as a participant. So again, if you haven't been in business for that 2-year time period that's required, you may want to go this way. But again, I want to remind you, one-time participation in the 8A program, so you want to make sure you truly are ready to participate in this program. Okay, so when should you apply? If we're talking about being ready, are you ready? I have a whole slide on that. 8A is a one-time only certification. So this is kind of a recommendation, right? Ask yourself, take a look at your business. Do you have the capacity to deliver on federal contracts? Earlier I mentioned about there could be contracts between 2 to 5 million. There could be contracts in your industry that are, you know, 10, 12 million. Do you have that capacity? Do you have sufficient cash flow? Again, government contracts are pretty large, pretty involved. Sometimes you're working on them and you know, if depending on the type of contract, if it's task-based, you won't get paid until you complete a task. So is that 2 weeks? Is that 4 weeks? Do you have the cash flow to carry you through that? Some contracts do pay as you're going through the contract, but some don't. So just, again, just something to think about. Do you have or have you demonstrated capability through past performance? Can you demonstrate successful past performance? So if those of you who have worked in the federal government or know about it, after every contract, you get a report card, if you will. So were you successful? Did you have a good rating on that contract that you completed? And are you open to advice on growing your business? We have seen firms that come in, they have been successful in the private industry, and they're spinning their wheels. They can't get through that federal process. And we offer advice. That's right. That's our program. We offer business development. So will you be open to, you know, kind of pivoting and looking at other options and meeting with mentors and counselors that can help you maybe, you know, kind of change it up? And the federal marketplace is different from private industry. So are you open to taking advice if that were the case? Okay, another requirement now, we've been talking about the business and years in business and are you successful, do you have bonding capacity, et cetera. But now we're going to talk about individual requirements because we are looking at your business and at the owner of the business. So do you have good character? The firm and all its principals must show good character. SBA looks at the following to make this decision. So any adverse information regarding criminal conduct, violations of any SBA regulations, whether you've been debarred or suspended, and that's the firm or the individual. Any principal who is incarcerated or on parole is automatically declined. Submission of false information during the application process or after approval is cause for termination. So you want to be truthful and honest in your application. Any firm or any of its principals that fail to pay financial obligations to the federal government. If you are delinquent on any federal taxes, student loans, any SBA guaranteed loans, that may disqualify you from this program. Okay, now we're going to look at the social disadvantage part of this. So an individual who has been subjected to racial, ethnic, or cultural bias within American society because of their identity as members of groups and without regard to their individual qualities. To demonstrate the social disadvantage, the business owner should include the following elements. You will be asked to write a narrative, an indication of which identity is or are the basis of your social disadvantage. So for example, do you feel your social disadvantage was based on any of these items: race, religion, ethnic origin, gender, sexual orientation, disability, etc.? They want you to identify that. Descriptions of incidents in which bias or discrimination has occurred. So any experiences should be related to education, employment, and business history. And we do have a guide, kind of a few more examples on what the social disadvantage narrative should include. Okay, the second part to the individual eligibility is the economic disadvantage. So this is, we're looking at, again, the participant, the owner, whoever makes up that 51%, must be socially and economically disadvantaged. So this is where we're going to do our math. And at time of application, the personal adjusted net worth must be equal to or less than $850,000. So how do we calculate that? We're going to ask you to list out your total assets, so everything that you own, list out all of your liabilities. We'll deduct that from your assets. We'll also deduct any equity in your business, and that's the percentage that you own in the business. Any equity in your primary residence. We deduct any IRA or retirement accounts, so that doesn't count against you. In California, we are a community property state, so we're going to look at your spouse's assets and if any of that needs to be deducted from your net worth calculation. A second portion of that will be your personal income average over the last 3 years must be less than or equal to $400,000. Personal assets, total assets must not exceed $6.5 million. And these 3 items are what is used to calculate whether you are economically disadvantaged or not. There is an older form that was used in the application, the SBA form 413, where you can list out, literally type in your numbers and it kind of calculates it for you. If you do a Google search, you can find that form and, maybe get an idea of where you fall, where your net worth would fall based on SBA calculations. Okay, so this is just a summary of those requirements, and we talk about the SBA certifications. That is the website where you apply for this program. Okay, so again, if you kind of think that this is a program for you, you need some more information, you have some questions, additional questions that may be specific to you, to your business, to the type of ownership you have. We get questions whether you qualify if your business is owned by a trust, by an individual, etc. So we can get into a little more detail about that with your specific situation. But just if anyone's wondering, the business must be owned by an individual. It cannot be owned by a trust. So that's a bonus question there if anybody had that. But if you have, again, any questions specific to your situation, you can always send them to 88questions@sba.gov. That does go directly to the Office of Certification and Eligibility, where an analyst will look at your question and give you an answer for that. We have how-to videos, business application user guide, FAQs, and if you do start to apply and you get stuck in the system, there's also a certifications@sba.gov email that you can reach out to and get help with your questions. Okay, so before we go on, I'm going to take a look. We had a couple questions. I think we're jumping ahead here on one about a WOSB. I've been trying to copy, but it won't let me able to pass the step. Okay, if you have problems with any of our application process, WOSB or other, you can send me an email and I can help get some information from that office for you. So I'll type in my email address here in a second. When I register at sam.gov, should I register the DBA or the underlying company? Okay, so you want to register your underlying company. So what is the name of that company? What shows up on your tax returns? On sam.gov, you want to make sure that all your information matches. Otherwise, it won't let you activate your profile. So whatever you're showing on your IRS documents, on your any state registration, your address for your business, it all has to match up. So make sure that you're using the same and that it's the actual business name. Because DBA, you can kind of change that around. So just make sure you're using that all across the same. Okay. Let me see if we have our next presenter ready. Sandra?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
Let me just share my screen. Okay, I think I got my screen up. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Anguiano. I'm a business opportunity specialist here in the office, Orange County Inland Empire. And today I'm going to start talking first about our HUBZone program. That's our next certification program. Thank you, Gloria, for going over the intro and the 8A program. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box as I go through the presentation. I'll get to those during the presentation or afterwards. I'll pause if there are any questions there. Okay, so now we're going to be discussing the HUBZone program. We're going to go over the program benefits, and the eligibility criteria. So what is a hub zone? So a hub zone is a historically underutilized business zone. So this program was designed to help small firms in certain communities gain access to federal contract opportunities. Hub zone areas are typically areas of low median household incomes or high unemployment, or it could even be both. And we will talk about how you identify these zones in the following slides. Now, the HUBZone program certifies the eligibility of businesses in disadvantaged communities to compete for federal set-aside contracts. So this offers employment and growth opportunities where they're most needed for positive economic impact. The federal government has a mandate of awarding 3% of all prime contract dollars to HUBZone certified firms. And just for reference here at the bottom of the slide, we have that in FY23, the federal government awarded $17.5 billion to HUBZone certified firms. At any given time, there are about 5,000 small firms that are certified into this program. There are contract set-asides and sole source opportunities for firms that are certified into the HUBZone program. HUBZone firms also receive a 10% price evaluation preference applied to full and open competition. What does that mean? If you are certified as HUBZone and you bid on a project that is open to competition, then you get a 10% price evaluation preference applied to the contract when you're being compared to a large business. If solely based on price and you and a large business have the same pricing, they will apply that 10% price evaluation preference. So, that means they're going to add 10% to the large business so that your bid would be considered lower. This is the only federal program that applies this benefit outside of set-asides. Generally your benefit is for your certification only. You should only receive, this benefit for HUBZone set-aside contracts or like the 8A program only for 8A. But this program lets you use it on full and open competition as well with that 10% price evaluation preference. So where do you find these HUBZones? Across the country, there are more than 22,000 communities that are designated as HUBZone areas. And there are 7 different designations that they fall under. So we have the qualified census tracts. These are designated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development based on poverty and household income criteria. You have qualified non-metropolitan counties. So these are counties located in non-metropolitan areas that meet at least one of the socioeconomic criteria. We also have redesignated areas. These are qualified census tracts and qualified non-metropolitan counties that have lost their HUBZone status due to changes in income levels, unemployment, or poverty levels. You have qualified Indian land. So these lands are contained within the boundaries of an Indian reservation, Indian country, or any other specific definition that applies in the state of Oklahoma, where there seem to be more qualified Indian land areas. We have qualified disaster areas. So this includes the census tracts and counties declared major or catastrophic disaster areas by the President of the United States. We also have governor designated areas. So certain rural areas that state governors have petitioned the SBA to designate as HUBZones. And then we have the qualified base closure area. So if your address is located in a base closure area, it will show an expiration date under the qualification status. But the basis for all of these designations, all of these areas, are high unemployment and or low income. Again, this information is gathered from the Department of Labor, census data, in order to make that determination. The HUBZone maps, which I'll show on the next slide, are updated every 5 years as opposed to annually. So in the past, every year they were making updates to the HUBZone map to see which areas would qualify and which would not. But they have changed that now so that the maps are going to be updated every 5 years. If you visit the SBA website, you can find the HUBZone maps to look up your address and see if you are located within a HUBZone. This map here, as you can see, is color-coded and it's really easy to read. You can play around with it, zoom in and out in order to identify these qualified areas. So this is a good tool to use if you're thinking about moving your business, or if you're looking to open a business, you may want to look into these HUBZone qualified areas. We do recommend that you enter a specific address for best results, because if you're just playing, with the functions of zooming in and out, one side of the street may be considered a HUBZone qualified area, but across the street, it could not be a HUBZone qualified area. So just be sure to enter an address on there. Now, to be eligible for this program, there are four major eligibility requirements that must be met. So this is a recap of all of them, the four major points, but I have a slide for each of them. So first, let's talk about size. So as Gloria mentioned during her presentation, you have to be a small business in accordance with the SBA's size standard table. So you want to make sure you identify your NAICS code and check out that table to make sure that you are considered a small business by SBA size standards. At the time of your application for certification for the HUBZone program, your firm must meet the SBA size standards for its primary industry classification. Now, at time of initial contract offer, a HUBZone small business concern must be small for the size standard corresponding to the NAICS code assigned to the contract. In addition to size, we will also look at ownership. Your business must be directly and unconditionally owned and controlled by at least 51% U.S. citizens. If you have multiple owners making up that 51%, please keep in mind that all owners must be U.S. citizens. The SBA does not consider holders of permanent visas and resident aliens to be citizens. Your business or principal office must also be located within a designated HUBZone. So a principal office means the location where the greatest number of the concern's employees at any one location perform their work. So we have some examples in here. If an employee works at multiple locations, then the employee will be deemed to work at the location where the employee spends more than 50% of his or her time. Now, if you have an employee that does not spend more than 50% of his or her time at any one location, and at least one of your locations is a non-HUBZone location, then the employee will be deemed to work at a non-HUBZone location. Now, in order for a location to be considered the principal office, the concern must conduct business at this location. For those concerns whose primary industry classification is services or construction, the determination of principal office excludes the concern's employees who perform more than 50% of their work at job site locations in order to fulfill specific contract obligations. Now, if all of a concern's employees perform more than 50% of their work at job sites, then your business does not comply with the principal office requirement. They have to physically report to the principal office. Aside from being located in a HUBZone, at least 35% of your employees must also reside in a HUBZone. It doesn't have to be the same HUBZone, where the business is located, but they do have to reside in a HUBZone area. Now, the SBA has its own definition as to what an employee is for the purpose of applying to this program. So an employee means all individuals employed on a full-time, part-time, or other basis, so long as that individual works a minimum of 10 hours per week. This includes employees that are obtained from a temporary employee agency, leasing concern, or through a union agreement. Volunteers are not considered employees, and you cannot count them as part of the 35% requirement. Now, the SBA also defines reside to live in a primary residence at a place for at least 180 days, or as a currently registered voter and with the intent to live there indefinitely. So if you have an employee that just moved, or they've just been at their new address for 30, 60 days, they can demonstrate their intent by updating their ID or driver's license, and then you would submit that as part of your proof for this 35% residency requirement. When you're determining the percentage of employees that reside in a hub zone, if the percentage results in a fraction, you can round up to the nearest whole number. If you have a specific scenario or are unsure, how to count your employees, if they qualify, as part of the principal office or if they're out in the field, if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out and we can talk about that offline. So the HUBZone program is managed out of our headquarters office in DC. So to get more specific answers, we do recommend that you contact them directly. They do have a dedicated email address for all inquiries, so hubzone@sba.gov. And then our HUBZone Program office also offers conference calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they're available during those hours at 2 p.m. Eastern Time to answer any questions you may have, as you're going through the application process, or if you're bidding on a contract and you have any issues, you can dial into their weekly conference call and ask their question there live instead of waiting for a reply to an email or anything like that. Now, once you are approved for the program, the HUBZone regulations require that all certified HUBZone firms recertify annually that they remain in compliance with the program's requirements. So although there is no limit to the length of time a firm may qualify as a HUBZone firm, the certification is not a lifetime certification. You will need to recertify for the HUBZone program once a year. This is typically around your anniversary or your approval date. During your active participation in the program, a program examination will also be required every 3 years. And this program examination may sometimes include a site visit that would be conducted by a member of the district office, of your local district office, depending on where you live. So this program examination is just an investigation by SBA officials to verify the accuracy of any certification made or information provided as part of, your HUBZone application or recertification process. So when the time comes for those, for the annual recertification or program examination, you will receive an email from headquarters with instructions on completing those steps. And just remember, you have to be proactive in your self-marketing. The HUBZone certification program is not a contracting program. The program requires significant commitment on the part of the business to market its product or services in order to succeed in the program. So you want to make sure that you focus on areas in your niche market and prioritize. Identify federal buyers, get to know them, learn how to do business with them, identify the agency contracting procedures, and those, who make the buying decisions. So you want to make sure that you're networking, attending events, trying to participate in matchmakings and things like that. So, that's going to really ensure your success with this program. All right, so that's all the information we have on the HUBZone program. Of course, if you visit our website at sba.gov/HUBZone, you can find more information. And then we also have a link here to the HUBZone maps if you're interested in looking that up. I don't see any questions in the queue, so I'm going to continue on with the Women-Owned Small Business and Economically Disadvantaged Women-Owned Small Business Certification Program. Okay, so when buying goods and services, the federal government limits competition for certain contracts to women-owned small businesses and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. And these are for, those businesses that participate in the SBA's certification program, official certification program. It's not for self-certifications. So becoming certified for the WOSB federal contracting program means that your business is eligible to compete for WOSB federal contracting program set-aside contracts within eligible industries. So these contracts are in industries where women-owned small businesses are underrepresented, and some contracts are restricted further for those economically disadvantaged WOSBs. And so the SBA maintains a list of those eligible industries and their NAICS codes. So let's talk about the benefits of participating in this program. So the federal government's goal is to award at least 5% of all federal contracting dollars to women-owned small businesses each year. So joining this program makes a business eligible to compete for federal contracts set aside specifically for this program. Now, firms can still compete for contract awards under other socioeconomic programs that they qualify for. So you don't have to choose, which certification you want to apply for. If you're between the 8A and HUBZone or WOSB, as long as you meet the criteria for every single program, you can obtain every single certification. Now, firms that choose not to participate in the SBA's WOSB contracting program, you may continue to identify as a woman-owned small business in SAM.gov for the purpose of competing for other contracts. So you can still self-certify yourself as a WOSB. However, you will not be eligible to pursue federal contracts that are restricted for SBA-certified WOSBs or EDWOSBs. And just for reference here, we have, the numbers for FY23. $30.9 billion were awarded to, firms certified into this program. And they were mainly in industries, under NAICS code sector 54, which is professional, scientific, and technical services, as well as in construction, the NAICS code sector 23. So how do you know if the WOSB program is right for you? So now we're going to talk about the eligibility criteria for this program. So in order to be eligible for this program, you must be a small business concern for the primary NAICS code or the contract for which you are trying to pursue. The WOSB, EDWOSB program has limited NAICS codes. If your NAICS code is not on those lists, then there are no opportunities for you, so you want to make sure you check that out before you apply. You have to be at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more women who are U.S. citizens, and that 51% ownership must be direct and unconditional. The women must be the ones managing the daily business operations. So they must be the ones, to hold the highest officer position within the business. They must work at the business full time during normal working hours. The woman or women must have the managerial experience required to run the business. They must be the ones making the long-term decisions for the business. And for this program, there is no minimum amount of time for a business to be operational before you can apply for this program. There's not like a 2-year waiting period or anything like that for this program. Now, if you want to qualify as an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, there are a few additional conditions that must be met. So each individual whose ownership interest will be used to qualify for economic disadvantage is going to have to submit documentation demonstrating their financial condition meets the defined economic thresholds. Now you'll notice here that these thresholds match up with those of the 8A program. So the personal net worth must be less than $850,000, excluding her ownership interest in the concern and her equity interest in her primary personal residence. Your income must be $400,000 or less in adjusted gross income averaged over the previous 3 years preceding the certification. Total assets must be $6.5 million or less for the fair market value of all personal assets, including primary residence and the value of the business concern. And we do have a note here, that funds invested in an IRA or other official retirement account will not be considered in determining the individual's net worth. Now, regardless of whether you're applying for the WOSB or EDWOSB, you are going to have to submit documentation, to support your claim. So for all businesses, since this is the woman-owned program, you have to provide your proof of U.S. citizenship. So you'll have to upload a copy of your birth certificate or your passport, for any owners who are women, if you have more than one woman making up that 51%. And then depending upon your business structure, there's going to be different documents for you to upload as well. So we have some examples here if you're an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, or a sole proprietorship. So once you go through the system to apply for the program and you choose your business structure, it'll tell you exactly what they need to see, to show on paper that, the business is managed, is run by women or one woman or multiple women. Now, if you're looking to get the ED certification, economically disadvantaged, there's going to be additional information that you're going to have to submit as well. You're going to have to submit the personal financial statement, which is the SBA Form 413. You will also need to complete a separate questionnaire in the system at time of application. And then in order to, determine your net worth and your salary and all of those things, you are going to have to submit IRS Form 4506T, request for tax transcript for each woman claiming economic disadvantage. And if you are married, you will have to submit your spouse's information as well. You'll have to submit your 2 most recent personal income tax returns, including all schedules, as well as the 2 most recent W-2s for each woman claiming economic disadvantage and your spouse as well. If you don't have W-2s, you can submit your 1099s. That is allowed. So if you don't have W-2s, just be sure to upload copies of your 1099s. And then, of course, once they're reviewing your file, if they need any other information to support your claim of economic disadvantage, the analyst reviewing your application may request that information as well. Now, as I mentioned, to qualify for this program, your NAICS code must fall under a certain list of eligible industries. So not all NAICS codes are eligible to participate in this program. So you want to make sure that your NAICS code appears on the list before you apply. When you receive a copy of the presentation, that eligible NAICS code link at the bottom is a live link, and that'll take you to the full list of which NAICS codes are eligible for this program. And we can't stress that enough, that if your code is not on either list, then there are no contract opportunities for you under this program. You can check back because, they do run studies and they update the list to add NAICS codes or take some off the list. But if when you're ready to apply, you go and check the list and your NAICS code is not there, then it wouldn't be worthwhile for you to apply because there aren't going to be any contract set-asides available for you. There are over 700 eligible industries or NAICS code listed on these. So we have a little over 600, I believe, that are designated for limited competition among all WOSB program participants, and an additional 100 or so that are for economically disadvantaged. So if you qualify, if you meet the criteria for economically disadvantaged, you're automatically, WOSB certified as well. However, if you don't meet the economic disadvantage criteria, then you would only be able to certify as a woman-owned small business. So if your NAICS code is on the economically disadvantaged side, then it wouldn't be worth it if you don't meet that criteria for economic disadvantage. And like I said, Congress requires the SBA to conduct a study every 5 years to identify industries in which small businesses owned and controlled by women are underrepresented in the federal marketplace. So make sure to check back periodically to see if the NAICS codes have been updated. Again, this program is also managed by headquarters, and only they can answer any questions you may have regarding your application. So they do have a dedicated email box, wosb@sba.gov. Or if you're interested in signing up for training directly from our program office, you can send them an email to wosbtraining@sba.gov. They do host webinars where you can ask live questions as well, or they go over like common mistakes in the application or errors that they see, when people are applying, or just, topics that come up a lot that people are confused about or don't submit the right information on. So reach out to them to learn about their schedule if you're interested in applying for this program. Okay, let me see. I'm not seeing any more questions in the queue. Okay. So now we're going to go over the Veteran Small Business Certification. This will be our final certification presentation today, and then at the end, I'm going to go over the application process for these programs. So every year, the federal government awards a portion of contracting dollars specifically to businesses that are owned by veterans. And then, small businesses owned by veterans may be eligible to purchase surplus property from the federal government, which I'll discuss in the following slides. So the benefits for certification. So the federal government aims to award at least 5% of all federal contracting dollars to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses each year. Competition is limited for certain federal contract opportunities to businesses that participate in the service-disabled veteran-owned small business program. So joining this program makes you eligible to compete for set-asides and sole source contracts. Now, if you are a certified veteran-owned small business, you have additional opportunities to pursue sole source and set-aside contracts with the VA under the VA's VetCert Program. So they set aside at least 7% of its contracts each year specifically for certified veteran-owned small businesses, as well as service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. To apply for certification with SBA as a veteran-owned small business or service-disabled veteran-owned small business, this is the criteria that you have to meet, the requirements for this program. First of all, you must be identified by the VA as a veteran or service-disabled veteran. So only the VA can make that determination. So you'll need to, speak with them, get the letter from them first to show, that you're a veteran or service-disabled veteran. You must be considered a small business as defined by the SBA site standard corresponding to any NAICS code that is listed in your business's SAM profile. You must have no less than 51% of the business be owned and controlled by one or more veterans. For certifications as a service-disabled, you must have no less than 51% of the business owned and controlled by one or more veterans that are rated as service-disabled by the VA. Now, for those veterans who are permanently and totally disabled and unable to manage the daily business operations of their business, your business may still qualify if your spouse or appointed permanent caregiver is assisting in that management of your business. And you're going to have to complete an application and submit your supporting documentation at My SBA Certifications, in order to get your application reviewed and be approved for this program. So you're going to visit certifications.sba.gov. The SBA's VetCert program is a top priority and emphasizes the SBA's commitment to supporting the veteran community. 2 million veteran-owned small businesses operate in the United States and employ, approximately 5 million workers. So veteran-owned businesses, contribute significantly to the U.S. economy, generating 1.3 trillion in total sales. Now, as of last January, I believe the SBA database of certified veteran-owned small businesses had grown to like over 25,000 firms. I'm sure that number has grown by now, so we need to update those numbers. But, there are plenty of firms that are getting certified into this program because they see the opportunity there for the set-asides. Now, to get the most up-to-date information on this program, I do encourage you to visit our website. This program is also managed out of headquarters, so we can't really see, when you submit your application. We can guide you through the application process, but we have no say when it comes to approving or reviewing the application at all. So if you have program-specific questions, please reach out to VetCert at sba.gov, or you can also try certifications at sba.gov. You can also reach out to our resource partners or our veteran business outreach centers, the small business development centers, even SCORE. They can help you, with the application process or to identify opportunities under this program. Now, if you rather speak to someone, there is a dedicated call center that can assist, and that number is listed here on this slide. The call center is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we also have a document for frequently asked questions. So, if there's something you're debating on or you get stuck along the way, please check that out or feel free to reach out to us here locally. Okay, again, I don't see questions in the chat. If you have any questions that come up on any of the programs I've gone over so far, please feel free to type those into the Q&A box. Okay, and before we end, I do have a couple of slides here on the My SBA Certifications portal, your one-stop destination, for all of SBA small business certifications. So in order to reduce unnecessary customer burden, the SBA has finally combined its separate small business certification systems with distinct application, compliance, and review procedures. Before we had this portal, the My SBA certifications, you needed to visit like different websites, different portals, depending upon which program you were applying for. So it was all over the place, depending on which program you wanted to certify for. So, but now with the new portal, this is your one-stop destination, for all of the business certifications. On here, certifications.sba.gov, you'll be able to apply for and manage multiple certifications in one place. So the new system leverages existing user data to support account creation, unified application process, and much more, right? As a result of these changes, the SBA estimates that the time it takes a small business owner to complete an application will be reduced by 40% for a single certification and up to 70% for firms that are seeking multiple certifications. So it's really cutting down the amount of time and documentations that you have to upload. So hopefully we're going to see a quicker turnaround with these applications. So let me share a couple of screenshots that we have for the portal. So when you visit certifications.sba.gov, you're going to want to click on Should I Apply to get started. So the system will ask you a series of questions related to business ownership, NAICS codes, readiness, and eligibility before it goes ahead and gives you your results. So like in the ownership section, it's going to ask you, do you own 51% or more of your business? Are you claiming social disadvantage? Are you a U.S. citizen? Are you a veteran? Are you male or female? Things like that to see, to determine which programs you would be eligible for. In the match section, it's going to ask you, do you sell what the government buys? So it's going to ask you to type in your NAICS code to see how much the federal government has awarded in your field. So that'll tell you, if our programs are a good match for you, if agencies are buying the product or service that you're trying to sell. In the readiness section, is your business ready to take full advantage of the SBA certification program? Is your business generating revenue? Can you invoice and receive payments electronically? It's just a series of questions to really see, if you're ready to work with the federal government. In the eligibility section, it's going to ask, basic questions. Do you own a small business located in the United States? Is your business registered in sam.gov already? Are you under the financial limits to determine, if you're eligible for the 8A program or WOSB? Can you provide annual financial statements? They're going to ask you to upload your balance sheet and income statement. So just basic eligibility questions to see if you are really ready to apply for the SBA's programs. Now, based on the responses that you give on that initial application process, you're going to see a matrix like the one here, indicating which programs you may be eligible for, right? And this is totally based upon the responses that you give in the previous screen. So from there, you're going to want to visit the knowledge base to preview, application questions for whatever program you're applying for. You can read up on their tips for success, and that way you can see the checklist and like a list of documents to have ready before you go ahead and begin the application process in the system. Here is a sample of all the information that you can find in that knowledge base, and that's a live link as well on here. You can find documents, Q&A stuff here on, how do I create my SBA certifications account? You can download the supporting documents guide. And most importantly, you can see the application preview. So you want to make sure, you check them out before you start the process, or if you get stuck somewhere along the way, check to see if there's a screenshot, if they have some tips in there in that application preview, so you can continue and make sure you've addressed everything that they're looking for in that application. This here is a timeline of the application process. You will need to register your firm with SAM before you can create an account in My SBA. So that's the #1 step for any of SBA's programs. You will complete the application and upload the supporting documentation in this My SBA portal. Now, once the SBA receives the application, there's going to be a screener that's going to conduct a check of all the documents. If everything looks good, they'll notify you that they have completed, the application, the screening of it, right? And that they will soon begin the review process of it. If there are any documents that are incomplete or missing, they're going to issue you a deficiency letter. It doesn't mean, you've been turned away or you can't, that's the end of the process for you. It's just merely going to outline what is missing, and, they're going to return the application to you so that you can update those sections, provide clarification in order to continue in the review process. Now, after, once, a complete application is received, after they receive a complete application, then an analyst will actually begin to review the application. And then again, they can request additional information before a final decision is rendered. The analyst will make a recommendation to the director of the program for which you have applied. And then, the director is the one who's going to be the one to make the final decision to approve or deny your application. Once that decision is made, either way, you're going to receive a letter. And that letter is going to serve as your official date of entry in the program, or programs if you're applying for multiple certifications. Your approval date will then also be listed in SAM and DSBS. So it'll show your certification date, and it's if it's an 8-day program, it'll show when your exit date is or anything like that. If you need any assistance along the way through the application process, you can reach out to our office here in Santa Ana or one of our resource partners that can assist for free with the process. There are consultants out there that can also help you, but it's something that can be done completely for free. A consultant is going to charge you thousands of dollars, maybe. Now, if you run into any technical issues, please submit a ticket to the service desk. We have the link here on this slide at the bottom. And then if you have any questions for any of the programs, you can reach out to certifications@sba.gov. We invite you, to check out the frequently asked questions if you need support specifically with the portal. And then we have a link to our resource partners so that you can go on there, plug in your zip code and see, who's closest to you or find your local district office. We have the phone number listed here for SAM if you have any issues with that, if you need assistance with that. The link as well. We have the link for the dynamic small business search. So these are all things that you have to have, in place before you go into the My SBA certification portal to apply for any certification. Okay, so these will all be live links as well when you receive a copy of the presentation. So, this concludes our presentation for today. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm going to leave here the contact information for Gloria and myself. So you have our email and phone number if you have any questions. And within the next 48 hours, we will send you a copy of the slides. So if you want to click on those links, and then you'll also receive a copy of the recording. But thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.